When the new foldables from Samsung were announced and I got to check them out, I was sure that it would be a repeat of last year and I would gravitate to the Galaxy Z Flip 4. After all, last year it was the phone that I brought to Hawaii and enjoyed more for the act of shooting social media content and just capturing memories with Issa, with whom I was reuniting after 18 months apart during the pandemic. The Galaxy Z Fold 3 was fine, it just didn't really fit with the side of me that is constantly shooting and posting. But this year, I decided to give the Fold a real college try, and chose to make it my main device. And since the day I got these new foldables, I have barely touched the Flip. After a week with the Galaxy Z Fold 4, I realized I am really enjoying it. Which is a little weird, because the Galaxy Z Fold 4 is not particularly different from last year's model. And this form factor here is something that I'm already quite familiar with. So after a week with using the smartphone both at home and on the go, I had a pretty profound thought. Maybe the Galaxy Z Fold 4 didn't change. Maybe I did. Hey, it's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? Here are some thoughts on the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4 after using it for 1 week as my main. Allow me to give a quick thanks to all of you for coming to hang out with me today and to talk about the Galaxy Z Fold 4. Don't worry, content on the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4 is still on the way, so make sure you keep up with when the videos come out by subscribing to my channel and by hitting the bell. Also, just like in my first look video, I have links to the foldables and various accessories for them down in the description, alongside different promos that you can use to make buying these latest editions a little bit easier. Those trade-in deals might be the best way of getting the Galaxy Z Fold 4, because if you're not already a fan of Samsung's take on a big foldable, well, there isn't really anything too different this year. The body is ever so slightly shorter, which you can kind of feel when holding it next to last year's model, but the main thing that you see and appreciate is that the bezels around both screens have shrunken down a little. A little goes a long way to making a phone that is supposed to be all screens all the time live up to that spirit. Now, this gray-green edition that is my review unit is a good looker, though whenever I just look at the backing on any lighting situation really, it just looks gray. This matted finish on the back though is really appreciated. Everything has been more or less polished or even strengthened, with the hinge feeling really sturdy even after a full week of opening and closing and opening again, and this backing seems to minimize some of the slide that the Fold 3 had on certain surfaces, but the main thing that I don't really like is how the phone will just rock on a surface due to the camera hump, or when you have the phone fully open, it'll just lean on that one particular area. And no matter what Samsung does to the materials or to the shape of the Fold, it still isn't the most comfortable thing to perform all of my hand gymnastics on. You see, I tend to pinch the bottom of the phone and then spin it around when taking out of my pocket, which feels perfectly fine to do with most regular smartphones, but it seems a little more precarious with the Fold. This is something that I was actually quite worried about when taking the phone out on a return trip to New York City, where a few of the tech friends were expressing similar concerns. It seems every time we have a camera test to do, we end up not only together, but together in New York.
I mean, that's a good thing, right? There's a lot of good things to record in New York.
Sure. In New York City again, thanks to Nick for recording this clip. Why a Korean restaurant? Is it because New York has some of the best Korean food and one of the coolest Koreatowns? Sure, maybe. Is it because the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4 is a Korean phone? Maybe. Or maybe I actually just watched a Korean drama on the plane all the way here, and I wanted to recreate those experiences. Cheers, buddy. Good to see you again. As with most pieces of tech though, sometimes the addition of some tools just helps to complete this experience. On top of the handling thoughts that I mentioned just earlier, a case like this, Samsung's own slim stand case, is exactly what I needed. I have this linked in the description alongside the foldables, and if you do decide to get this by using my links, make sure you kit it out, because a big screen like this deserves to be easily viewable. And of course, this soft silicone makes it a little bit easier to grip. Now, speaking of grip, there is a silicone grip case with a strap that you might remember was basically introduced in last year's slew of accessories as well. As time went on, I found myself finding various ways of actually using the big screen for various tasks. I will give credit to Samsung and Android in general for finally putting some real effort into making the big screen experience easier to navigate and to take advantage of. See, aside from media consumption stuff like YouTube and, Netflix right over there, I often didn't think of a big screen as something I would need for like daily general use tasks. That might have been the case because creating those workspaces wasn't as easy before like it is now. If we go into an application right now, this dock appears on the bottom, which actually mirrors the dock you have on the home screens. And it also gives you quick access to 2 of your most recent applications. This all just streamlines the act of creating a workspace where you can have multiple applications open at once. In this case, I have emails, so I can answer emails. I have Telegram here in the corner so that I can keep up with messages like with Issa. And then of course I have YouTube on the side to just watch a video while I get done with all of my stuff here. Is this a new ability for the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold? Of course not. But because it is just that bit easier now, the barrier of entry or the learning curve is lowered enough to make it something I do much more often. Not to mention the fact that you can always come back to that workspace easily because the entire thing is used as a recent app. Head to there, it opens everything up, and you're back to where you were before on your workspace. A couple more examples of why this works for me, and the operative words are "for me." Maybe half and half the screen for Electrify America to start the charge on my recently acquired Hyundai Ioniq 5, and then have the Blue Link app to track my car's status. Maybe replace Blue Link with something like Twitter to pass the time charging. And in terms of work, I can put Notion on one side for typing out stuff while doing the research on the other. I've even started warming up to doing singular tasks on the big screen, reading emails or articles or scrolling through social media because, well, it's going to be a little bit more comfortable because everything is blown up to a bigger size. Actually, typing is something I've come to enjoy because the split keyboard in either Samsung keyboard or in Google keyboard is quite comfortable. By the way, the crease is still there, and while it would be better not to have it, it doesn't actually get in the way of any general use or enjoyment. Now, full disclosure, I haven't actually played many games on here because watching shows and YouTube has been my priority. After all, I was actually kind of sick last week after getting back from NYC the first time, so when the Fold came in, the first thing I did was throw some Korean dramas on there and I watched them in bed. I luckily recovered in time for the next trip to NYC where I put the opened Galaxy Z Fold 4 into my air hooks so that I could finish that same show and cry my eyes out on the plane. That might have been the biggest aha moment for me because for a time I was bringing an iPad Pro with me on flights because I preferred to watch anything other than the screen on the seat in front of me. But now, since the phone that is in my pocket is also a tablet, I've actually found myself replacing those particular experiences with just the Fold. Okay, so you've been seeing some camera samples throughout this video, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. The story of the Galaxy Z Fold 4 is ultimately that the main camera got a bump up to a 50 megapixel sensor, and it is the best performer. Now, while I still prefer the shooting experience of the Galaxy Z Flip because it has its own little whole tripod thing, I did find myself just adjusting with the Galaxy Z Fold 4 by doing most things handheld. So you get into the camera on the outer screen, hit this selfie mode, and when you open it up and turn it around, you have yourself the main cameras and plenty of room to be able to hold the phone so that you can do some vlogging stuff or maybe do it this way for vertical video very easily. One thing you have to remember though is that you have to look right at the cameras and they are pretty far away from the screen, which is your viewfinder. You find yourself looking at the screen way more, at least I did. But the thing is, the main sensor has great detail, really good shallow depth of field, and it certainly is the one that I have enjoyed using the most on the phone, even for segments like this, talking heads with audio that actually sounds pretty good. The ultra-wide is fine, definitely a step down in just hardware capability, and the zoom comes in handy once in a while, but I haven't really used it much for video. Speaking of video, you definitely should be using the selfie mode as much as possible because the cameras on either the outer screen or the one that's hiding underneath the inner screen are passable and then just not that great, respectively. As you can see, the front-facing camera when the phone is folded on the outer screen, this is what it looks like. And to make matters worse, here is the camera on the inner screen, even worse. Definitely the screen that you only should be using for the most part for like video calls and whatnot. It's definitely not the creator's one because at the end of the day you just want to be using the main camera, the one on the rear. Open up the phone, use that selfie mode so that you can actually use the screen as a viewfinder. Even if you end up looking at the screen a ton, and you just do, you want to make sure it looks good, and it does. But right there, this is the one you want to use. 3 different ways of getting selfies. Isn't that pretty dope? This is the one you want to use though. I think Samsung refining the experience of the Fold is the right step, at least for now. If the previous generations of the Fold were proving a concept, the Z Fold 4 is properly realizing it. The Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 hasn't skipped a beat whenever I've done literally anything this past week with this phone. That is a big deal because if you want to be throwing basically everything at the big screen, it better be able to handle it. I will admit that battery life could be a bit better, but I haven't felt a ton of range anxiety, honestly. Besides, I give the phone some props for managing to get through a 5-episode binge session of Our Beloved Summer. And the speakers were actually pretty good for that purpose. Just remember to rotate the cameras to the bottom half so that you're not covering up the stereo speakers right up here. Overall, the first week with the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4 has very much been a net positive, and not because this phone is some sort of leap forward in the lineup. Instead, it simply refines what is already familiar, while coming at just the right time for someone like me that over the past year has decided to embrace big screens, and I'm willing to put up with some of the quirks if the final result is a pretty great portable large screen. So yeah, I did change. Enough to really take the Galaxy Z Fold 4 for what it is and make it a real part of my daily life and work. Maybe if you find yourself in a similar situation, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 may have come at just the right time for you as well. Are you looking to get into foldables yourself with the Fold, or are you preferring the Flip like I know most people do? Let me know in the comments down below. As a reminder, I do have links to these phones, here's both of them right there, both of these phones and some accessories for them in the description and in a pinned comment, so if my video convinced you to get one of these, I got you covered. From there though, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody.